Wow, Game Freak really made a push to buff a lot of things in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Moves, mechanics, abilities, and even entire Pokemon got a lot of tuning, and it seems like some of them are actually going to be viable now, as well as some other quality of life improvements that happen with some other features. So let's go and start off this list with Eevee training. Now, even without super training, even without horde battling, Eevee training is the easiest it's ever been right now, which is why I'm putting on the list. There will be Pokemon and stuff, but I wanted to get this mechanic out of the way because Eevee training is super simple right now. And also, it's really nice because in one patch of grass, you can train 4 of your stats. So you just walk in there, and then depending on the Pokemon that shows up, you can train your speed, hit points, special defense, or attack, and then you only have to KO 7 Pokemon in an SOS chain, and that's going to max out that entire stat. That's going to be faster than horde battling and much faster than super training. Even though a lot of people are sad to see it gone, super training just didn't really work out in the 6th generation, that it was slower and took a lot more work than horde battling, and now with those SOS battles, you pop an adrenaline orb and then you're pretty much done after that. So you can get a lot of really good Eevee training in a very short amount of time, and also there's still like the Eevee checker that all you have to do is press the Y button on a Pokemon, and you can see the Eevees right there. So Eevee training got a huge buff in Pokemon Sun and Moon. But with Pokemon that got buffed, we can go and look at number 9 on this list, Beartic. Beartic got a raw buff to its attack. That just went from 110 attack to 130 attack. So now it has a respectable amount of power. It's on the level of a Garchomp, which is pretty serious. So that means whenever it's in the rain, because it has that Swift Swim ability, it's just going to get a nice little buff to all the damage you can put out, while still being a little solid right there. Oh, also, it gets the Slush Rush ability. So Slush Rush, not only is it very fun to say, but it's very powerful. Think Swift Swim, but in Hail. So this is a buff to like so many different things. Hail teams get a buff, Beartic gets a buff, and just damage overall and speed. So during Hailstorm, the speed stat of a Pokemon with this ability is doubled. That's just awesome. So Beartic getting quite a few different changes. Like if it just got the attack change, probably wouldn't make it on the list, but getting both an ability and an attack change makes this Pokemon pretty threatening now, and we might actually see it for once. So a really nice buff overall. Number 8 on this list is going to be Mantine. Whew. This Pokemon got an insane buff. Guys, its hit points went from 65 to 85. Oh, and it got Roost. Like, Mantine, what? It just went insane off of this. So already, before even getting Roost or before getting the hit point buff, Mantine was a pretty reliable special defense tank. Does have a very big weakness to electric type hits, but it's still a very usable Pokemon. The biggest problem with Mantine is that it just couldn't come in and then tank up enough hits. That when you want a tank, you want it to just switch in on a move, heal up, and then try to disrupt your opponent from there, but Mantine couldn't do that too often. That without a big form of sustain, it would just eventually get blown away, and then it can't really do much. Also, the fact that it was a raw hit point buff is even better for the Mantine, because now it has 85 hit points and 70 on defense. So that means as you full invest in the hit points and full invest in special defense, you're still gaining effective defensive tankiness that you wouldn't have had before. If this was just straight 20 points on special defense, Mantine wouldn't be as useful, but now it can even soak up a couple of more offensive physical hits and then be able to roost up after that. There's not a lot of special defense tanks out there, so Mantine is going to look to be a very viable, very used Pokemon if you need to fill that hole on your team, which is pretty nice. Next up, we have the IV checker. So IV training also got a really big buff in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Then instead of having to go to the judge every time and have him list off a long string of words that you have to remember, you just press a button. You just go judge, and then you find out your Pokemon's IVs, and then you're good to go. Also, you can catch wild Pokemon with 4 IVs. So you do 2 SOS chains that are about 40 SOS chains long, catch 2 Pokemon, and then you should have a 6 IV Pokemon between them. Or you can just go out and catch a lot of Ditto, and then you have a good Ditto bank, and now IV breeding is easier than ever. So breeding got buffed, IV training got buffed, IV checking got buffed. Everything is just so much simpler right now in the 7th generation. And also, I would even say that the PC got buffed, because you just turn on the PC and you have everything there. You don't have to worry about withdrawing, depositing, or moving Pokemon stuff. There's all these buttons. You can click items, you can click all the things you need to do, and the interface is so good right now. So everything is just really nice and improved for Pokemon Sun and Moon on the side of IVs, and that's why it's going to make it on the list. Now we can go to number 6 on this list, and that is going to be Flygon. Now, Flygon didn't get as complex of a buff as Mantine or Beartic, but it just gets Dragon Dance. And maybe it's not going to become more powerful off of this, like how Mantine is getting an insane power spike, but it's definitely going to get a larger usability. That Flygon, no one's using Flygon. Like, every once in a while we might see a Mantine, and it's still a usable Pokemon even before the buffs. But Flygon, it's a Dragon-type Pokemon that doesn't get to feel like a Dragon-type Pokemon. It didn't get a Mega Evolution. It got so left out. So there's so much love in just this one little move for the Flygon. So hopefully this is going to make it a lot more usable. It's going to be really interesting to see. Dragon Dance, one of the most powerful moves in the game. So Flygon, yeah, getting that love, and that is going to be a pretty massive buff for the overall current power level of this Pokemon. Number 5 on this list is going to be Z moves and status. So when I was watching Z moves for the first time being revealed, I was wondering if they'd affect status moves at all, or if like setup Pokemon would actually be harmed by it. Because when you think about it, you're spending all this time on setup, all this time on getting your things going, and then someone just comes in and one pops you with a Z move. It kind of removes a lot of the idea behind setting up. But now Z moves, you can actually transition them into setup, into status, and then get extra benefits that are not even going to be that straightforward. Like if you use Recycle, you gain +2 on your speed. So you're going to be able to have access to moves and other kind of stat boosts that the Pokemon wouldn't have had before, which could be more valuable than just using a huge one-time nuke move. And also, there's just some absurd effects overall, like all stats being increased. That if you use conversion, all of your stats are going to be increased. So Porygon Z just got a mad buff, that Z move conversion, and now gains +1 to everything. +1 speed, +1 attack, +1 special attack. So it's like having a choice band and a choice scarf while being able to choose its moves at the same time. That's going to be more usable than any item it could pull up, and that's also going to be incredibly useful. Even though you only get 1 Z move per battle, that's showing that even with a status move, you can find enough effectiveness to justify using that as your 1 Z move. Also, there's full health effects. You use Belly Drum, and you go to full health, and then your Belly Drum activates. So this is going to be a very, very safe way of getting Belly Drum on slower Pokemon. That's one of the bigger problems is that with the Citrus Berry, if you take more than 75% of your health while trying to set up the Belly Drum, it's going to fail. So now you can take that big hit, use the Belly Drum, and then you're going to be at 50%, no matter what you're going up against. So that's a pretty good effect right there. And also Stockpile. That Stockpile has built-in healing now. That you gain +1 defense, +1 special defense, and full health in one turn. That is definitely worth a Z move. So all kinds of big effects coming through right here. That different Pokemon getting different levels of buffs from all the effects. And then we can even see something like Memento and Parting Shot. The replacement Pokemon is going to get full health. That all these crazy effects that we can get +1 in a stat, +2 in a stat. Also augmenting other moves and stuff just to make them a bit more useful. So the Z move status, I'd say it surprised me that the effects are so diverse and so beneficial right now that it's actually very usable, and then it buffs just a ton of Pokemon. Any Pokemon that could use status that needed a little extra, well, that Pokemon is now going to be viable because of it. And then Z moves in general outside of status, also buffing moves like Hyper Beam and Overheat, that it changes the move entirely, so the secondary effect doesn't even matter. You use a Z move Overheat, well, now you have a 195 base power move that doesn't drop your special attack by 2. That's going to nuke something. Then you could Overheat again to nuke something else, and Hyper Beam, those moves that have like that one turn of resting afterwards, they're really frowned upon. No one really likes them because it's like, I'm too vulnerable afterwards. Well, now you get a huge amount of damage, a big nuke off of that, and then you don't have to worry about it. So you can either ignore that move after your free KO, or then just go for 2 KOs, and maybe that'll justify the 1 turn afterwards. Number 4 on this list is Mega Evolution. So even though Mega Evolution is kind of downplayed in the 7th generation, not usable in VGC 2017, not really that accessible before Pokemon Bank comes out or anything like that, there was still a big buff to the way that Mega Evolution works, in that speed stats and all the other stat boosts are going to be calculated for that turn. So normally, say if you had Mega Alakazam, you go and Mega Evolve, well, you're not going to have that +30 to your speed, so you can still get outsped and nuked, and since you don't have a Focus Sash or anything, well, you don't really get to feel the impact of your Mega Evolution. Now you gain that speed. So this is going to benefit many Pokemon, because most of the Mega Evolutions out there, they gain some form of speed that they really want to get some usage out of, and also Baynet. So now Baynet Mega Evolves, gets that Prankster, and then gets to do whatever it wants. So just kind of showing the effectiveness right here, that a lot of the Pokemon that really need that speed boost. Mega Beedrill, this is an insane buff to Mega Beedrill because you were forced to run Protect in 3 moves in single battles because you have to Mega Evolve, then Protect, then utilize your speed, but now you can just Mega Evolve so you get extra coverage. You have a lot more safety, you get more damage, more coverage, and then Mega Beedrill getting access to that Fell Stinger is going to be really good because now I can run the Fell Stinger and then another Bug-type coverage move, or at least have some other options. I guess I'll do a quick honorable mention on the Fell Stinger as well. Didn't really make the list because I feel that the usability on Fell Stinger is still very niche, but it got a massive buff. It went from 20 base power to 50, and if it KOs a Pokemon, it's going to raise your attack stat by +3 instead of +2. Now, I just feel that not enough Pokemon really get it to get super utilization of it, but now there's that opportunity there that if you're running the Fell Stinger, you are cutting away from your coverage just a little, but then +3 attack on something like a Mega Beedrill, well, the game ends immediately right there. So that's something really interesting to take into consideration. But overall, Mega Pokemon getting a nice little bit of a buff. They can play a lot safer and then utilize their damage sooner, which is pretty good. Now we're going to get into the top 3 of this list with weather-inducing abilities. So all of the main weather got a nice little bit of a buff in the 7th generation. That Torkoal now brings the drought. Pelipper now brings the drizzle. Vanillux can bring snow warning, and Gigalith with that Sandstream. Also, going back to the hail buff and just ice kind of buffing overall, that Alola Ninetales does have these snow warnings, so a lot of little bit of quality of life changes right here, but Gigalith going to maybe have some usage on that Sandstream. Torkoal and Pelipper getting picked up right now, and Pelipper actually getting an extra buff on top of this, plus 10 to its special attack. So now that Hurricane, it sets the rain. Hurricane can't miss. Plus 10 special attack, more damage, chance to confuse. So you can actually get a lot of mileage out of these changes, and that's all about the combos and double battles. You set the weather, you have your Pokemon next to you. Now you can run Vanillux and Beartic and have good amounts of speed, good amounts of damage, and then just back everything up right there. Gigalith. More Sandstream Pokemon were needed, honestly, and Sandstream even finds good usage in single battles. So now Gigalith, already being somewhat used just for its tankiness, its sturdy ability, its setup, can also bring a little bit of utility behind it. You go Stealth Rocks, Explosion, like, you know, Stealth Rocks, Custap Berry, Explosion with the sand, and now you can go into a Pokemon like Excadrill and keep the sand alive in singles. So big buffs all around. The power of weather-inducing abilities, it's just crazy that we've had so few because it does change the battle really rapidly, but now weather is coming back very strong. So number 2 on this list, Leech Life. Probably another reason why Fell Stinger kind of got an honorable mention, because Leech Life, I would say, got a bigger buff that went from 20 base power to 80 base power. And it's just one of those things that you always forget about. Oh, knowing little Zubat doing like tiny little bits of health or tiny little bits of damage and healing itself. Well, now you have to acknowledge Leech Life like a better Drain Punch. Physical damage, a little bit more power if it's stab, and it also heals you for 50% of the damage done. So we have a lot of sustain that can be built into a lot of Pokemon right now. Bug-type Pokemon getting a buff with that physical Bug-type Pokemon now having the ability to Leech Life and gain something from it and get a little bit of tankiness out of it. Also, it's a TM now. So getting the change TM increased its usage on a lot of Pokemon. A lot of Pokemon that didn't have access to the Leech Life before now have access to it, and it's TM, so you just plug and play, and then you go and wreck everything. So this was like one of the most surprising things ever. It's like, why is Leech Life getting a TM? Oh, it's 80 base power, and it still has the healing effect. Never mind, that's absolutely broken. Awesome. And now it's time for the number 1 biggest buff in Pokemon Sun and Moon, and I'm gonna say Confusion Berries, or Nature Berries, or Flavor Berries, whatever you want to call them. Mago Berry, Wiki Berry, all these things. It's just insane what happened, because these were the most useless items. No one ever cared about them ever since the 3rd generation when they were introduced. You might throw them into a Pokeblock, and even then they were kind of garbage at Pokeblocks, but now they heal 1/2 of your health. It went from healing 1/8 of your health, so less than a Citrus Berry, and can confuse you if you screw it up, to now healing 1/2 of your health. We have a berry that heals 1/2 of your health. It's Recover built into a berry. It's 2 Citrus Berries built into a berry. That is way too good. So now the Figgy, Wiki, Mago, Aguav, and Ipapa berries have usage that we can do something with these berries now. It's just really cool to see that, and also just that big of healing is absolutely massive. So I think I kind of said it best when I was realizing this in my video, that this buff changes everything. I will say that the way that you can just gain 1/2 health like that, now it's going to change the idea of, am I running Citrus Berry on this Pokemon, or am I going to be running one of these Confusion Berries? Because if you run the Confusion Berry and you're not confusing yourself, well, just going to be better in Citrus Berry. So this rewrites a lot of tanky Pokemon. This rewrites a lot of Pokemon strategy. That's why I think it's pretty awesome. So if you guys enjoy the video, biggest buffs in Pokemon Sun and Moon, I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.